If you want to find out about reinvigorating your retail environment, everyone, specifically that nice group of people down there with the Korean gentleman to their left. If you want to learn more about the retail environment, why don't you pop in and sit down and engage and have a nice half an hour. Yes, it is huge change. They've all been, but they have a wake-up call and we're on. You know, that's why we're here, really, to add a bit of vitality to the day. Right. Thank you, everyone. Sorry for the slight delay. Just want to get numbers in. It's pointless talking to a blank wall, but anyway, thank you for waiting. Just to introduce reinvigorating the retail environment. Thank you. Reinvigorating the retail environment. I mean, a sexy subject itself, almost akin to the Holy Grail, really. But you know, how do you do it? That's what we're trying to get to the bottom of here. Get some suggestions and identify what the challenges are, and then broad it out and see where we go. Now, to do that, to my left we have Tom Burch, who's Managing Director of Projection Artworks. Does all kinds of very clever things. Oliver Mack, from the Maycomb consultancy, and Will Hegan, Director of Sales and Marketing International AVI-SPL. So we've got very different people here to give us their side of the equation about retail and where they're coming from, more or less. Now then, everybody hits off. Have I gone? Everybody hits off about the customer experience. We're never quite sure where we should start with this. Should we start with high-level analysis, or should we start with technology? We're almost having technology blindness at the moment. It's been thrown at retail at a fair rate of knots. But where do we start when we start to evaluate AV and how we bring customers into the retail environment, first of all, long before we get to that experience side? What comes first? Tom?
Well, certainly wouldn't start with the technology. I think you do have to start with that high-level analysis. What are customers really wanting when they go to retail these days? Big shifts in what's happening on the high street, and it is about actually creating an experience for these people rather than just selling them simply product. So it must start with the analysis as what do they want to consume when they're in the store, and then after that, maybe look at what technology is best to produce it.
How far are we? How sophisticated are we? How far down the road are we with this sort of analysis? I mean, it's very, that we've had a Black Friday, we've had a fairly up and down Christmas. All the retailers had a tough time. There's been huge numbers of orders and business being put online. Yet everybody I talk to loves going into a shop and enjoying an experience. Yet they're ardent, passionate shoppers on the internet. If I was a retailer, I'd be quite worried about what channels I use and how I plug into what their tastes are and what methods I use to engage them.
Well, and that's exactly it, and that's what the role of the high street store is now becoming. It's becoming a place where people can go and actually have an experience. Actually, whether they have 20,000 products on the shelves or they have 10 products on the shelves doesn't really matter. As you say, most of these people are actually making the point of transaction in their living rooms at home.
Ollie, being a pragmatic sort of chap, what approach is Maycomb taking to all this? What do you advise? I mean, any examples of customers you've done projects for that you can actually quote as good examples of how you've gone about the problem?
Yeah. The thing is, as a consultant with a technical background and technical and engineering DNA, we tended, and we still tend in some projects, to go too early into technical design. What we learned in the last 5, 6, 7 years, this business is totally shifting. I have 2 children, aged 15 and 12 years, and if I watch them, how they communicate, how they inform about products, etc., how they get influenced by YouTube stars and bloggers. So the way we sell in the future tremendously shifts. On the other hand, we have this big thing, what is called Omnichannel process in the retail. How can you put together all channels, online, physical, etc., and gather information about your customers' needs, about all their footsteps they are doing, And I think this is the point to start. Look at your customer. How can you make him happy? Which are the channels? And how can you put this in a very data-driven way on an omnichannel system? And then comes AVI, because AVI is just one small single part, mainly in the physical store design, the physical point of contact. And there it's, on the one hand, this is our experience with our customer, it's on the one hand getting them attracted, make an experience, having a wow factor. Like for example, for Audi, we developed a VR-based car configurator because they go into the city centers of the hotspots of the cities of the world, and they can't afford and they don't get the space, the physical space, to show their products in physics. So they developed a configurator and thought, how can we bring it on the one hand on big walls, one by one. On the other hand, how can we make it modular and put it on a VR experience, for example? So you go to, I don't know if they implemented already at Piccadilly. We did 2 or 3 stores. You can go in, configure your car, or already configured online. You get your VR goggle and you have a space like this one, and you can go around your car, sit in the car, and it's totally immersive. So that's a wow factor, an example. The other thing is to think deeply, how can you, because developing such an example like this VR costs a lot of money. And if you do the investment only for a single event, for a single flagship store, you never will get an ROI. So you always have to think very early to which extent you want to transport this kind of technology into other channels, make it modular, standardize it, think about rollout, operational models. That's one of the challenges today, to make it profitable, by the way. Yeah.
There seems to be two things going on here. I would have thought, we're looking at this, you need some sort of behavioural analysis going on that perhaps understands how the customer behaves in the first place in different zones, markets and so on. And then, when you've got something like this, you'll always wow someone with a particular experience they're never going to shy away from and be attracted to instantly. They're two very separate things though, aren't they? Yeah. One is a quick win, but the other, how far are we down the behavioural analysis route? Have you come across? Is there a formal process?
Whether there's a formal process or not, I don't know. The only thing that that we've done, or our little foray into that, was been using some of the emotional recognition and tracking software. We've just did a project for Davos at the World Economic Forum using exactly that. So users.
That's interesting. Tell us more about that. Go on.
So users came into the experience. There was an interactive display with 6 different content stories looking at big challenges to the world: geopolitical, terrorism, security, etc. And as people were interacting with this content, there was a camera watching them, and it was analysing their facial expressions. And then afterwards, we plotted graphs as to what people's reaction to that content was. And then you could go and to a big screen, and then you could look at your reaction to the content and analyse it compared to everyone else's reaction to the content. And actually, the technology works really well, and I think it's based at the moment on about 2 million different faces. I think what Apple are probably doing in the background with the iPhone 10 is using all their facial tracking capabilities on that to store images of multiple faces. And so where you've got the user in a fixed location where you know where their head is, it's possible to tell an awful lot about what they're actually thinking. We are some stages away from just walking around a retail store and tracking people's faces as they're moving around. But I think we've made big steps in the last 2 years to a very empirical test as to whether people are actually enjoying the experience or pretending to enjoy the experience.
How many retailers sort of take this step on, and what kind of company are they? Would you say? I know it's probably difficult to generalise.
I don't know of any retailers who've started using that. Yeah, there probably are somewhere. Yeah,
it seems an obvious. It seems an obvious spot, doesn't it? I don't know what your customers are like, but it seems an obvious thing to try and learn as much as you can about the customer to whom you're selling, before you actually put a strategy in place to decide what technology you're going to use to communicate with them and try and endeavour make sure they buy from you, surely. Seems an obvious thing, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's just I just don't think it's been around for that long, but it is an obvious thing, and people used to use the metric, didn't they? If you were used to go into a store, if you bought something, the experience was good, but we now know that's not the case. People are going to stores, enjoying the experience, the products in there, and then going back home, comparing the price and buying elsewhere. So it's no longer a metric as to whether a store is good, as to whether people buy products from it.
Will, what's your response? What AVI-SPL doing in the retail space, and what sort of where do you go in to a customer? Has the thinking already been done by the time you get there, or can you influence it somewhat with a bit of mindset?
I guess like all of the projects we work on, it varies from job to job. Ultimately, the different clients have different level of maturity in terms of how they're approaching the retail environment. And one of the key things for us is, as well as I agree with all of what's been said so far, but the other part of it is also about the branding and the whole experience from end to end, and the brand awareness that comes from the retail space. So for a lot of companies, it's the only physical connection that clients have to their brand, and that's a very, very important part of it.
You see, that's the key thing, isn't it? It's getting into, as you mentioned, getting into their mindset, and how you do that is the key to really pulling them in and keeping them there.
Yeah.
How many options do you have? I mean, clearly, brand recognition is one, a very powerful one. I would say quite a subtle one. Are there any more direct ways of actually getting into people's heads and really influencing behaviour at all that you come across that might be interesting? Because I think this is where it's all at, isn't it? We can talk to the cows come home about the technology, we will do, I'm sure, in a minute or two, but it's this early bit that actually we looked into where we've covered the first Tide conference in the States, and there was much more analysis and talk about dominating how a customer thinks before almost they get to the point of that buying process, so they're all in a correct state of mind, and therefore you can almost adapt your environment temporarily, if there's these small environments, to create the fit that almost match their mood, and then sort of catch them and pull them in. Now this is quite sophisticated. I mean, it's quite new in a sense, but there's been so much investment into retail that almost seems invisible to us. But I think behind the scenes, there's a lot that's going on, isn't there? In a sense, and we're not quite sure how to bottle that and actually tell other people how. Well, these are the 3 steps you should follow.
Yeah, I think there's also a lot of tailoring of the way that retail is aiming to attract different demographics as well. So, excuse me, the different zones within different stores can sometimes be aimed at attracting and targeting different demographics, ages, and even from the different sexes as well. So the way the way the branding is happening is very much aimed at targeting different groups within the market.
So this omnichannel experience you referred to before, I mean, it's been punted out, hasn't it, all the time? I've never seen an omnichannel. What is an omnichannel experience? It's just multiple channels of communication. What is it?
Omnichannel is you have, for me as a potential customer, I have many doors I can go through if I reach for a sale, for a purchase. I can go online, I can go to a store, I can get recommendation from a friend who routes me to a dealership, etc., etc. And the key thing is, the physical retail, where we AV experts are mainly involved in store design and store implementation, there's a big gap at the moment between this omni-channel process, because there's done a lot of data analysis. There are a lot of, if you look at the big online retailers like Amazon and Co., they experienced and perfected for the last 20 years this kind of gathering data about customers' behavior, about their needs, etc. They've perfected it by providing a very unique set of possible products and services which could fit to Clive's needs because they know you since 20 years. So how do you get this knowledge about Clive into the store on High Street? One example who is doing quite well is a Japanese fashion brand. It's called Uniqlo. It's set a little bit on top of H&M, for example. Even I go there and can buy some standard clothes, but also my children go there, interestingly. And what they did is they combined, they have free Wi-Fi in the store. So they attract people, young people, to go in the store because they don't have a mobile flat rate, go into the Wi-Fi, and then they caught them in the store because they know exactly don't know that you're Clive. If you're not registered in the online store already, if you're registered, where you're mobile, because normally 90% of people go online via their mobile devices. They connect your mobile with your name, your register information, and then you come to High Street, into the store, go into the Wi-Fi, they captured you. So, and now they need what you want. They want what your size is, what the colors are, and then they connect it with a digital signage system. Very interestingly, they have a lot of signs, digital LCDs, and they provide up front to the cash desk. And if you go to the cabins, provide specialized, individualized content which could fit your needs and could influence you to spend more money in the store. So they connect over the different channels, the omnichannels, online, physics, the data about the customer by using Wi-Fi in this case. The other thing Tom told, we also have experience in gathering information about biophysical information, age, gender, mood, which is also, this is used, for example, at Burberry in Regent Street. They made early, 6-7 years ago, they made first experience in this and let the environment react on your mood. So if you need a present for your wife and you're in a very busy mood and not willing to spend and go around, the light will change because they recognize we have facial and body recognition. They see, oh, this customer, he's very busy and he's not in the buying mood. They change the lighting, they change the background music, etc. But it's not personal. The more interesting thing is the personal connection. What is difficult is the law, because in the European Union with the e-privacy law, which is coming on, and it's standing up front to the door. This may be a showstopper for all kind of this big data, IoT-driven business models, not only in retail, but also in retail. Yeah.
Fascinating. I mean, that's highly personalized nature. That's really sort of going the big data and analytical software route. That's one hell of an investment from this company, isn't it, to do that and integrate it and present it smoothly. That's a lot of joined-up thinking going on there, isn't it, really? Is that sort of analysis common? I mean, that sounds... I know we've been watching Burberry for years doing this. And guys running Burberry just moved to Samsung, funnily enough. I wonder why. But they're big in retail. They want to get more into the mindset of the customer and go one step further. That's not very normal, though. It's not very usual, is it? That sounds like the perfect answer, really.
I think it was interesting actually mixing those ideas. You mentioned about Amazon, what they've been doing for 20 years. I mean, if retailers can get this right in store, then the results are quite clear. I mean, Amazon, Google, these guys have almost the perfect emotional connection tracking technology because they're watching people's every move, everything they search at, how long they look at it, moving back and forward. So they have all of that high-level analysis all through just a single web page, hence the reason it's the most valuable company in the world. So it's no surprise that retailers are trying to do this, but actually their challenge is rather harder with people walking around a store as opposed to just tapping in a series of options on your mobile. So Yeah, it's no surprise the appetite's there for it. And Uniqlo and these guys, yeah, it's expensive, but the rewards are worth it.
Well, the big investors in retail, we haven't seen much of it from the outside, but most of the projects going on at the moment are usually retail based, and there's so many of them, and they're quick and dirty, aren't they? They throw money at it, have a period, and then they stop and put another project. And there's so many of them that we lost track going on, but it's difficult to get an overall picture of where they're all leading. This multiple contacts and joined up approach seems just right, but that's probably more at the luxury end, isn't it? It's quite interesting, as you noted, that both you and your family are shopping in there. So that's quite an interesting combination of appropriate behaviour to attract different customers. Is it different types of... This is the change we're going on at the moment, is that when I look round and see who's innovating, it's not the company that was around 30 or 40 years ago. It's a very different, fast-moving, fresh approach type of company. What do you feel, Will? I mean, some of your top clients here, anybody moving out the traditional space? I mean, the classy one is Amazon moving.
Yeah.
We interviewed them a few years ago, and I had a quite interesting chat with Jeff Bezos in the 90s when everybody was giving good hammering about just revenue, no profit. And the guy had so many ideas, he was running off the scale with them, He said, don't worry, we're going to. There's so many things we can do. And we thought there was a bit nuts. But actually, when you think now and seeing how they're performing, it's amazing what they're going into and think they can do well.
Yeah, and they're opening bricks and mortar. That's the interesting thing. They've come at it from completely the opposite direction to where a lot of the other companies have come from. And you're absolutely right. A lot of the businesses that you see are making innovations on the high street are ultimately they're relatively new to the market, but there are still a lot of other companies. A lot of sports retailers that have been around a long time and are investing a lot of money into the customer experience, because they know ultimately if the only way to get people to draw people into the stores is to drive value into the experience ultimately. Because most people will just go back to their iPhone and order it off Amazon or order it off another digital retailer. So the investment we're seeing into retail is absolutely massive ultimately.
There seems to be a market split though, doesn't there? When you get into this sort of thinking, you're almost in a process of helping to make the customer spend more money. When you're at the other end and you're selling almost commoditized products, then you're really heavily into competition with online, where the costs are lowest. And you look at who's gone bust over the last few years. It's normally the ones who just can't compete. It's a high volume, low cost end, isn't it?
Yeah, and haven't innovated. Ultimately, they haven't moved with the times.
Well, how can they innovate? That's the thing. Is what can they offer? How can they change their offer when they're dealing with high volume, low value goods? These are massive investments, but how can they better an online experience? So there'll probably be no stores left, will there? I mean, look at the Toys R Us scenario. I mean, how can you innovate? It's quite difficult, isn't it? You've got to go more at market where the value is.
I think the guys with the big out-of-town stores face even more of a challenge than the guys on the high street themselves, and the car dealerships is another big example of that. How are people going to buy cars in the future? People don't want to go out of town to a garage or a showroom on a roundabout in Chiswick to have a look at a car. That's not actually how they consume that information about what type of car they want to buy. So, yeah, the big out-of-town guys have got real issues because of you don't really want to go there. I don't really want to go there. And at least on the high street, there is something a little bit more energetic and inclusive about it, and you can go from one experience to the next. I don't know what they're going to do with all that retail space.
Well, you mentioned cars there. I've been following for an IT journalist, configurators, and Rover were at it first of all. Now you've got all the car manufacturers. You've got projection mapping going in to make the things look better, and all this sort of combination of gimmickry and ability to make a decision better. And we had all that sort of online stuff, choose your car here, choose your colour and everything else. And we weren't aware of how much of a difference is made. But, with high value goods, you want a bit of bespoking. Therefore, you want a sales process that currently takes too long. If anybody's ever bought a car here, it's very painful when you're going through all the papers and God knows what. You want something that speeds it up and makes you feel good about what you're purchasing, and then you've made the right one. So the understanding of the customer's thinking and process of selling needs to undergo some thought. It's very long-winded at the minute, and that probably gets in the middle of it. But really, is technology? It does sort of get in the way a bit, doesn't it? I mean, you look at the average retailer. and you sort of it's screen blindness almost, isn't it? You know, and what we found is that it does get in the way somewhat. How can you get around that? You know, they have gone somewhat mad, haven't they, with signage and everything else? You're sort of blind when you go in a store these days.
Well, and there is a tendency in retail, because even though the budgets etc. look big, the industry is not actually as well off as it might be perceived to be, and then that actually leads people to saying, right, we've got to have a digital signage solution, we've got to have a screen, we've got to have this, and they're not really thinking about the integration around it. And as I say, going straight in for we need this technology, we need this in store, actually, rather than taking a step back and going, actually, what are we trying to communicate? What do we want this screen to do? Does it even need to be a screen? And it certainly shouldn't be a screen with a whole load of wires hanging out the back and a little pop up in the corner because if they've just plugged the USB stick into the back, because that was the cheap way to do it. Yeah. So if you're going to do it, you should spend the money on it.
I think there's a reasonable correlation between the companies that are reacting to and trying to do something in a defensive manner to the companies that aren't innovating full stop, and the ones that are starting to disappear. If you're just trying to compete, then you're dead, I think, in truth.
But
if
you just push your debt a few years in the future, but then it will come suddenly. I totally agree what you said. You have to step 1 or 2 steps back and look at your customers and look how can you bring this experience. One final example, because when I'm in cities, I try to spend 2-3 hours to make a kind of research walk, my personal research walk, and look at different. In Korea, maybe you heard of this, and I looked at it also. The Tesco example. Tesco is a food retailer in Korea, and a few years ago they were on the 2nd place. In case of number of stores, number of square meters in the big city areas. And the management decided to have an objective to be the first retailer in South Korea for food. Food is a commodity. 80 or 90% of the week, from Monday to Friday, it's commodity because you just have to feed your children and you don't have any experience of fun going to the food store, buy beverage, etc. So, and this was exactly the point. What a very small consultant and creative agency picked up, went to Tesco and said, okay, how can we improve the customer experience? When the customer is going back from office to his home, is going to the crowded underground, he's taking some minutes at the underground, and what they did is they put virtual windows or shelves, product shelves, to the underground with digital signage, but also analog prints. And they developed an app for the mobiles. And so you can pick up your products, the milk, the butter, and all the commodity products with a virtual cart by waiting 2 minutes on your underground line and pay it directly. And then you drive home, and when you come home, a bring service will deliver. And these are all small companies, 1-person, 2-person companies located in the different areas of the cities. Tesco engaged to cover the last mile to the customer. And so they managed to get in within 2 or 3 years, reach their objective, be #1 retailer for food in South Korea, not by increasing the number of square meter in stores, but thinking of the customer experience and putting it into the right technical solution. Very clever. Yeah.
Unbelievably so, yes. Why can't we do that here? Is it a cultural difference? I mean, why do they choose Japan to do that? That would be phenomenal. I think we had a trial, haven't we? A cashless operator-free store where you just go in.
We also can do it here. I think it's easier to do it in UK maybe because decision is a little bit faster taken. But you have to find the right people in the brick and mortar companies. it's a tremendous cultural shift for them. But if they can't manage it, they won't exist in the near future. Automotive, we have a lot of automotive customers also, and they spend a lot of money in digital retail environments. We're working for Porsche, for Daimler, for Audi, for Volkswagen at the moment. Very, very cool projects and very large extent on a global scale. But it's only a temporary solution at the moment because the product, the car, won't exist in this special matter anymore within the next 5, 10, 15 years. The product will be a mobility service and not the car itself. Porsche has for sure a niche because also in 20 years it would be cool to have a Porsche and own a Porsche. But for all the other manufacturers, they have totally shifted their mindset, and this will also bring totally new retail environments, going from the car showroom to more. Yeah, I don't know at the moment where it will shift.
Therein lies the complexity of retail, doesn't it, really? It's not just changing. As you discover different habits and behaviours and ways to simplify processes, it then brings into completely different scenarios. You just can't standardise anything. And we're used to standardising processes, aren't we, to make them simpler. But I think we have to face the fact that the customers are complex beings, and the buying process is infinitely more unpredictable. And therefore we have to keep all these channels, a bit like publishing, you know. I have to keep channels open whether I make profit on them or not, because that's the way I have to deliver information differently down each channel. And that's the dilemma everybody faces, really. It's a question of who survives with what channel and who separates out to do them. And the customer I think we forget that it's too clinical. I hope we don't get the car scenario going that way. Take all the pleasure out of it. I mean, having been to the Frankfurt Motor Show, I didn't see too much of that, funnily enough, but I did see a lot of customization going on at the luxury end of the market, which suggests that the actual process and experience of driving a car and being associated with a nice one is what people find most appealing. I hope to God we don't get that route. It'll be so impersonal. It'll be too automated, unfortunately. But what are you involved with, by the way? Are you involved with any of this sort of stuff, new technology-wise? I mean, that's what we're interested in. Interesting approach to new technology examples, Tom.
We're not involved in anything in the automotive industry at the moment. I think, as I said, there's the kind of idea that you'd go into a showroom and there'd be a projection map car at the back, and you change the colour and you change the wheels. I mean, there was a big kind of like buzz about this 5 years ago. The reality is it doesn't work very well. In the main, these retail environments are fairly bright, and the cars are fairly shiny. You can use projection mapping to bring some dynamism and sort of highlight form and shape, but you can't change a set of alloys for another set of alloys using projection mapping. So actually, that's where VR has done way better in the kind of car configurator world. Most of our work in retail has really been in store window, and actually creating displays and standout that you can't create by, in a nice way, cutting out shapes of cardboard and doing interesting displays the old-fashioned way. So, and we've worked a lot in projection in the windows. The work we did for Fabergé at Harrods was a kind of a groundbreaking piece.
It's a masterpiece, I thought.
Yeah. Well, that was to prove that it could be done, I think, rather than anything else. But actually, interesting now. I mean, most of our work in Windows is with LED. Obviously, it's just got infinite advantages over projection in those lighting environments, and it's no surprise to see quite so many millions of square meters of LED around the show today. Yeah.
What about holographics? And we went to CES, obviously, where you get most of this retail extravaganza going on, almost football pitches full of mild front ends with incredible holographic technology almost coming out at you like Back to the Future, you know, in a huge scale. I think if you're going to hit them with it, hit them with it big, you know, and just make it so amazing.
I think
it actually does engage with big time, you know.
To point out things like this transparent LED wall over here, I'm not sure those technologies are ever really going to redefine how we see our shop windows. But I think some of the persistence of
Let's
vision, the
raise our
spinning
voice at the
holographic
beginning,
displays that are around, Holoviz, the guys that are over here.
Yes.
I actually think some of that holographic technology is interesting because of not only does it work, but it's also incredibly bright.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that, I mean, there's 2 years ago there wasn't really much in the sort of holographic industry going on, but I think this year at the show there's I think there's three stands doing it, and I think the results are pretty cool.
It makes people stop, doesn't it, when they see this sort of stuff? Whether it's
Draws you in.
it does, excuse me.
Yeah.
It does draw you in. I mean,
Yeah.
what do you? I mean, interesting. There's three people here, expert. I mean, what attracts you to a retail environment? What about you, Will? What do you find? What draws you in? I mean, this is probably the best question to ask you. I mean, what?
In truth, it's normally my wife drawing me in, actually. But the reality is it's about relevance to me, in truth. And I think we're probably in a slightly unique situation where when we walk into a store, we're looking around and trying to analyse what the technology is. But ultimately, it's about the relevance to me, and that's again a big challenge to retailers, to try and be relevant to all people within their customer base, and that's what I was trying to get at earlier on around the demographics and trying to understand consumer behaviour and the information security stuff is going to be really key to how they drive their strategy going forward, because using that information can be incredibly powerful. And tailoring those experiences to customer history and customer behaviour, I think it's going to be stopped pretty fast.
Sorry, Ollie. What about you? Do you like your cars? You seem to do a lot of car projects. Is that a personal preference, perchance, or is this a company requirement?
Personal preference, yeah. But I'm still working on it. What attracts me, if it's not a commodity purchase, it's on the one hand the mood and the mix of interesting experience in the store, which could be digital, but could also be a good barista, and this kind of personal service, which is given. My wife comes from a smaller city south of Stuttgart, and we use the weekends twice or 3 times a year when we visit her parents to go shopping on a Saturday morning. And it's just letting you flow, and for sure if there's a holographic display in a shop window, could be but it's not sustainable. Sustainable is the experience when you enter the store, and they get a combination of value adds, interesting information systems, but a very unique personal service of the staff which is there. And this is, besides our technical perspective, I think this cultural change in the mindset of the sales staff, which is in the physical store, this is one of the key factors to attend and retain me as a customer. Yeah.
What about you, Tom?
I think we're
Are
slightly
you driven mad in retail environment because you're always analysing?
I must admit,
when you go in.
I don't do an awful lot of shopping. It might show by what I'm wearing today.
I
But
can imagine you ever switch off, do you, when you go and do sort of thing? You're always thinking about how you can better.
But that's the things I obviously you go into retail stores and you just look at how they've integrated the screens, etc. Blah blah blah. If I actually think just now about which parts of the retail experience I enjoy, it is actually more when you go into your local corner shop or something, and the guy behind the counter, and you actually know him, and you have your little sort of two-way mindless chat about something for 30 seconds whilst you buy something, and you walk out again. So at one hand, I think actually the people in stores are more important than actually what they're doing there. But obviously that doesn't scale up. You can't have 20,000 perfectly trained staff who are charming and know the name of everyone who comes in. So I think that on one hand it's the people, and then I would more often go to a department store or somewhere like Whole Foods or something like that where everything's on display around you. I wouldn't normally go to a brand direct store particularly. So yeah, I think it's a choice, and people for me are actually more interesting than what's around. Yeah.
I mean, it's very well. That's very interesting, isn't it? We all go for the experience, but it seems a combination of creativity and function. and the thought process are very different when you're thinking scientifically about big data and the process you're trying to do and the basics of what the creation will think differently about. I mean, I think mood management is going to be absolutely critical about how we manage that and how what detail we get to that level is going to be absolutely important. And that's, again, it's going to depend on the data around it, how we can manipulate that to produce something that's as close to the person coming in that store and sitting in that zone as possible. Not sure how far. We talked about this yesterday, actually, about non-traditional AV technologies having a huge influence on not just buyers, but office environments as well, how we should think about actually how people feel within these environments, not just what they're doing, how to influence how they behave in an office environment is just as important as what they do. We'll certainly get there when we're talking about these millennials. There's some alien who just drops from space, you know. I don't like referring to anybody. Old farts like myself still like a bit of wooing, you know, in an office environment. I don't want to be left in the broom cupboard, you know. But it's always that's two different mindsets. I'm not sure which comes first, really, and what skills you need to create these environments. Whether you need just two types of people and sort of AV gets packed in the middle when the big decisions have been made. I don't know what impact they have really on these decisions, really. What do you find? I mean, who leads these projects as far as you're concerned? Because I find them not in the normal line of business type people. What's your experience? I mean, certainly some of the stores we come across, they're not your line of management types, are they? When they've been thinking, they're more designers, I would say.
Yeah, that's the experience that mostly it's led by store designers, which come more from interior design and from a static design approach and from brand communication approach. And this is for sure one important pillar. It's like an architect, interior designer, or workplace consultant for office space. But the other thing is exactly this understanding of integrating into IT processes, this kind of collecting data, defining rules, what to do with the data, giving it back to the store, interfacing with the digital signage systems, etc. And it's more a business process and the IT driven thing, because this is also important to scale these kind of concepts. To spend a budget, have a good design team, and build one flagship store, that's always a capable thing. It depends on the budget and on the timeline. So, and you can do extraordinary things for sure. But the key is how can you learn what's worked and how can you scale it to other locations and downsize it, modularize it. And there you have to think more, on the one hand, in kind of productization of the systems and integrated it in the operating, deployment, rollout, etc. processes. And the one is the business process, the omnichannel process, which is all about using data, gaining data, and not only collecting it as in a big data cloud, but also think about what can we do with the data. This is a key challenge. And very less people, and these are not the store designers. These are the 20-year experienced Amazon online retailers and data architects, which are needed for this. Yeah.
Anybody involved in any of these projects at all? Don't all speak at once. Man filling his bag. Right. Any questions at all? We'd like to have three experts here. Perfect people to ask. If you've got any particular corporate challenges you're facing that you'd like any comment on? Okay. And any sort of... you've made a very good summary there, actually. Probably we covered most of the points. We're just about reaching our maximum time now. So thank you all. Hope that's been informative. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.